It's so good to be with you. As I came into worship today, I saw Harry Wisdom, and I thought he looked just as young as he did yesterday. It was his birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Harry. We celebrate with you. You're always young. It was about 2 months ago when Pastor Paul asked if I was available on the weekend of the 20th and 21st of July to preach because he was on his way back from Africa. I said I'd be delighted to preach with you, for you. And then he said, oh, by the way, the topic is judgment. Thanks, Paul. My first time of preaching, and the subject you give me is something that most of us don't want to hear anything about, is judgment. Well, folks, I have some good news that's mixed in with that which might be bad news coming into this morning. The Jesus way has something important to say to us. Isn't our initial reaction to judgment sometimes one of dread, one of questions, and one that leaves us somehow with a hollow part in our hearts, and we maybe have some questions that leave us with fear? Well, I'm wondering if it doesn't go way back to the 14th century. When Dante's Inferno was written with that sense of that journey into that fiery hell, it created that sense of dread for people and that fear of what could be awaiting. And then 4 centuries later came the American evangelist movement. Jonathan Edwards was the leader of that group of distinguished preachers. Jonathan Edwards picked up on the theme of Dante's Inferno with using the theme of fear when it came to judgment. Fear. That sense of dread at what is coming. And he wrote a book on the basis of his sermon that he get, and some call it a famous, but I'd call it an infamous sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. You see, what Jonathan Edwards was doing was giving birth to what some of us may know in our past of what we might call the hellfire and brimstone preachers. Any of you know what that means? Okay, some of us have heard them and some of us have not. But they are the ones who, in the Jonathan Edwards theme, use fear to somehow drive us to Christ. You know, fear is a powerful motivator, folks, but that's not the Jesus way. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. For years and centuries, that theme had been leading people to think of judgment as you better do something because the angry God's going to do something for you or to you. Hellfire and brimstone preaching was popular, and some of us have been marked by it, and maybe some of us even came to Christ by it. But the problem with it is we don't know how to get rid of the fear once we come to Christ. The Jesus way has something to say about that. You know, I call the way in which that if we use fear as a motivator to come to Christ, it's like buying fire insurance. We want to avoid this place called hell, damnation. I would like to say also, boldly, that those who use fire, hell, and brimstone